Welcome to Stories Between Us Anthology, where the lives, intimacy, and tension of Black queer men take center stage. These stories are for mature audiences and may contain explicit themes. Each story is written and voiced with the help of AI tools. The government shut down, took my job, and my neighbor's been paying me ever since. Part 1. The fridge was down to condiments, half a lime, and a bottle of almond milk that had expired. Julius had been ignoring the utility bill emails, but the blinking light on his router told the truth. The internet was gone. Lights were next. He sat in the dark kitchen with his button-down still on, collar unbuttoned, as if pretending he had somewhere to be. He worked for the government, or used to, before it shut down 3 weeks ago. No pay, no back pay. Just quiet tension building in his chest every time he checked his bank account and saw it hadn't changed. He'd done the math. Rent was due. Groceries were not an option. And the only person who'd offered to help, really help, was the neighbor he'd avoided since moving in. Loud laugh, tight tank tops, thick arms, and a mouth that never stayed shut. He flirted the first week Julius moved in, but Julius kept it formal. A nod, a wave, nothing more. The week before, Lamar caught him in the lobby and mentioned he'd heard about the government shutdown. Said he figured it might be affecting Julius. Then he said something simple, quiet, and direct, that he was around if Julius needed anything, and that he meant it. Julius brushed it off, nodded, and walked away. But that was before the fridge emptied, before the lights started to flicker, before the voicemail from his landlord came through, tight and polite. Now Julius sat in the dark with his phone in his hand. Lamar's number wasn't saved, but it was still there. He opened the message thread and typed, "Hey, that offer you made? Is it still good?" Lamar replied almost instantly, "Yeah, come through and let's talk about it. Doors open." Julius stared at the response for a long time, then grabbed his keys. The hallway was quiet. Apartment 4B was cracked just enough to let him know it was real. He knocked, anyway. Lamar opened the door shirtless, calm, and casual, like he'd been expecting this moment. He asked if Julius was hungry. Julius didn't answer. Lamar stepped aside. Julius stepped in. The apartment was warmer than his, smelled like fried rice and something sweeter underneath. The lights were low. TV still on. Lamar moved to the kitchen, grabbed a plate, and handed it over like it was nothing. Julius took a bite, chewed, swallowed. He didn't say thank you. Lamar eased back onto the couch, legs spread, eyes low. He said nothing, just watched. Julius kept eating until he couldn't anymore. Then he stood, crossed the room. Lamar didn't move. Julius reached for the hem of his shirt, paused, then pulled it off. Lamar smiled, not cocky, not surprised, just ready. Julius spoke softly, mostly to himself, said it was just for the rent. Lamar leaned forward, fingers brushing his waist. He told him to start there. The door stayed open for a second too long before swinging shut. The fridge was still empty. But tonight, Julius wasn't going hungry. The government shut down. Took my job, and my neighbor's been paying me ever since. Part 2 starts now. Julius didn't plan to sleep. Just eat, handle what needed to be handled, and go home. That was the unspoken agreement. But he woke up to daylight pouring through unfamiliar curtains, his shirt halfway off the bed, and Lamar still in the room, not touching him, just watching from the other side, like he was waiting to see what Julius would do next. Then his phone buzzed, a notification. It was an Apple Pay payment of $1,000 from Lamar. Julius blinked twice. His eyes stayed fixed on the screen, the number burning into his chest. He hadn't expected that. Not directly. But now it was clear what last night was and what it came with. Payment, and not just symbolic. It was money he desperately needed. Lamar stood by the kitchen counter, sipping from a mug like none of this was strange. "I had fun last night," he said, cool and casual. "I get how this shutdown might have people in need. And there's more where that came from. If you want it." Julius pulled on his shirt slowly, avoiding eye contact, trying not to seem shaken. "This some kind of sponsorship?" he asked, half joking. Lamar smirked. "Call it whatever you want." Julius gave a quick laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it helped him breathe. He left without saying, "Thank you." Back in his apartment, the heat felt colder. The silence felt heavier. He set his phone on the counter and stared at the payment like it could tell him what to do next. He paced, opened the fridge, closed it again. Nothing had changed. He ran through the mental list of what that $1,000 could cover, what it wouldn't, how long it might last, and what he'd have to do when it ran out. He leaned on the sink, staring at his reflection in the window. He had to get this money somehow. So fuck it. Let's do it. The next week, the government was still shut down. The silence from human resources felt louder than usual. No updates, no promises, just a recycled email that said to keep checking back. That night, Julius reheated rice from an old takeout order and poured water into an old wine glass just to feel like he still had structure. Pride made him hold out another day. But by the weekend, he was back at apartment 4B. This time, Lamar didn't say a word. He just opened the door and let Julius walk in like it was already decided. It kept happening. Late nights turned into early mornings. Clothes dropped faster. Words slowed down. Sometimes there was food, sometimes not. Sometimes Julius stayed long enough to sleep. Sometimes he left before sunrise. Lamar never asked for more, and Julius never offered. Until one night, after everything settled, Julius sat up in bed, shirtless, sweating, half wrapped in a blanket that wasn't his. He looked over at Lamar, whose arm was draped across the back of the couch like this was all normal. Until one night, after everything settled, Julius sat up in bed, shirtless, sweating, half wrapped in a blanket that wasn't his. He looked over at Lamar, who was already sitting up, watching him with something different in his eyes. Lamar spoke first. "If I stopped sending you money, would you still come over?" Julius blinked. He hadn't expected that. "What are you talking about?" Lamar held his gaze. "I just mean, is this just about the money? Or is this about me?" Julius didn't answer right away. He hadn't even thought about it. Not really. Not out loud. Lamar looked away for the first time, then added, "I know what this started as. But I'm not gonna lie. I've been lonely as hell. I was hoping maybe this could be something. I just didn't know how to ask." The room fell quiet. Not awkward, just quiet. Julius laid back down slowly. Lamar didn't move. Neither of them had an answer. The shutdown was still going. And now, maybe, so was something else. Secrets at the Frat House, a mini black gay story of brotherhood, desire, and the hazing night that changed everything. Inside the walls of the fraternity house, loyalty and secrecy rule. But when hazing pushes too far, and a man's private relationship with the fraternity chapter president collides with the weight of tradition, desire, and danger explode together. This is the story of what happens when love is forced underground, when brotherhood becomes betrayal, and when one night at the frat house ends with a secret too heavy to hide. Fraternity life looked good on Instagram. The photos hit every angle. Step team mid-freeze frame, black skin lit by stadium lights, line jackets creased just right. But inside the house, behind the chants and the scholarship posts, were real men, hungry to be seen in ways they couldn't name out loud. He was a junior now, 2 years in, solid with the alumni, the kind of guy they trusted to run things when the upperclassmen weren't around. He wasn't loud, but he was respected, handled business, held his own. Nobody knew he was sleeping with the chapter president. It started during Hell Week last year. Long nights, study sessions, early gym runs. One night turned into a few. Then came the workouts that ended with a hand on his lower back, a look that held a second too long. The first kiss happened behind the recreation center, sweat still drying on their shirts. That kiss didn't end things. It unlocked something. A tension they never spoke on, but couldn't let go. The president was everything the frat loved, masculine, sharp, clean fades and tailored suits. He called every chant with his chest, moved through the campus like a man who didn't ask permission. And that man would show up at his door after midnight, still smelling like cologne and control, pull him in by the jaw and make him feel everything he wasn't supposed to want inside that house. They didn't call it anything, didn't talk about what it meant. They just kept showing up. Then came that night. Hazing season hit harder this year. New pledges, new pressure. Alumni breathing down their necks about legacy and tightening up standards. That night, the pledges were lined up in the basement, sweat and nerves in the air, push-ups, chants, and liquor. One pledge's arm gave out mid-set, and he hit the floor hard, passed out completely. The sound of him hitting the floor cracked throughout the room. It was silence, then chaos. Somebody moved in closer to help, but the president shut it down quickly. Voice low but firm, he said, "Nobody say shit. We handle this internally." Loyalty meant silence. Silence meant survival. But the damage was done. Later that night, the frat house was silent. The pledges tucked in. The rest of the line brothers cleared out. He walked the hallway slowly, chest tight. Found the president already there, in the cut, where the light didn't quite reach. Back hallway, just shadows and that tension they'd never handled right. They didn't speak at first. The chapter president leaned against the wall like he'd been waiting. Arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes cold but calculating. The guy stepped closer, chest still tight from the chaos in the basement. He started to say something, but the president cut him off, said, "You're gonna help me clean this up." His tone left no room for questions. When the guy hesitated, the president leaned in close, too close, and said it lower this time. "Unless you want the rest of them knowing why I really come to your room at night." Silence stretched out between them. Tense, heavy, the kind of quiet that makes your stomach turn. The hallway smelled like weed, sweat, and fresh paint, but all he could feel was the heat of the president's breath and the weight of the threat. The president didn't blink. Somewhere down the hall, a door creaked. Voices echoed. They both looked that way but didn't move. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. And some secrets don't stay buried. Not in a frat house. Not when survival's on the line. Sleeping with the boss's enemy. A mini story of corporate desire, forbidden hookups, and the affair that could end it all. This is the story of a corporate romance that should have never left the conference room. The one where desire overrode loyalty, where sex became betrayal, and where one man realized he was sleeping with the last person he should ever touch. They didn't go to the retreat for love. They went for networking, for strategy meetings, for a weekend of corporate jargon in overpriced hotel ballrooms. But when a drink at the bar turned into a stolen night of heat, two men crossed a line that could cost them far more than their reputations. Because one wasn't just a colleague. He was tied directly to the boss's worst enemy. It started with a retreat no one wanted to be at. Corporate getaways always sound better in the memo than in real life. Too many suits, too much fake laughter, too many buzzwords spilling over cheap wine. That's where he was. Another mid-level manager in a hotel ballroom pretending to care about synergy and leadership exercises. Then he saw him, the rival company's rising star. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of smile that looked more like a dare than a greeting. They shouldn't have even been in the same space, let alone talking. But alcohol loosened everything. And by the time the breakout sessions ended, they'd found themselves side by side at the bar, trading glances like secrets. One drink turned into three, a brush of the knee, a laugh that lasted too long. By the time they got into the elevator, it was already decided. The hotel room door barely clicked shut before the suits came off. Hands tugged, mouths crushed together. Bodies colliding like they'd been holding back for years instead of hours. The sex was reckless, fast, and then slow, desperate like they knew it was wrong but couldn't stop. He felt the weight of every thrust, every moan swallowed against his skin, every fistful of sheets pulled tighter as if holding on could make it less dangerous. And when it was over, when the air smelled of liquor and skin, that's when the truth dropped. The name he mentioned casually. The connection that snapped everything into place. This wasn't just a stranger from the retreat. This was the man tied to his boss's worst enemy. The room went quiet. The glow of release turned into realization. He had just crossed a line there was no walking back from. And in the morning, the whole company would know he wasn't just another manager at a retreat. He was the man who slept with the enemy. The choir director's control slips when a young magnetic organist arrives. What begins as admiration turns into tension. When the sanctuary empties and they're left alone, desire threatens to drown out the devotion they're both sworn to protect. Church is one of the few places where appearances matter as much as the message. Everybody's watching, everybody's listening, and everybody's got something to say. The choir director is usually safe from the spotlight, trusted, respected, focused on the music. But when the church brought in a new organist, the attention shifted. He was the man the congregation counted on to keep things in order. The choir director, sharp suit, steady voice, hands lifted with authority when Sunday morning swelled. For years, nothing slipped out of place. Not the robes, not the notes, not the image he worked to protect. But the first time the new organist touched the keys, something shifted. He was young, slim, dark-skinned, fingers moving like the songs had been waiting just for him. The sound he pulled from that organ was different. It didn't just fill the sanctuary. It filled the director's chest, low and heavy, and it made him look twice, longer than he should have. Whispers started almost immediately. Choir members stayed late after rehearsals, pretending to reorganize sheet music while really just watching how close the two men stood. Elders started asking questions about why rehearsals were running over. Nobody said it directly, but everyone noticed. The way the director leaned too far over the bench when offering notes, the way the organist glanced up from the keys and didn't look away fast enough. The organ itself became a meeting place. Hymns slowed down, reworked, stretched into something that carried weight. When the sanctuary emptied, the air between them didn't. It sat heavy, electric, waiting for someone to name it. The rivalry showed up too. A tenor started auditioning for solos he'd never wanted before, desperate to pull attention back. A deacon made side comments about new faces distracting the music ministry. Every note carried tension now, not just because of who was singing, but because of who was watching. One night, after rehearsal, the director closed the rehearsal with a snap, told the others they were dismissed. The organist stayed, hands still on the keys, playing something soft that wasn't in the book. The director walked over, slower than he needed to, and leaned against the side of the bench. The sound was quiet, but the silence between them was louder. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the director's hand touched the back of the bench, close enough to brush the organist's shoulder. The organist stopped playing but didn't move away. It was enough. Enough to set the whispers ablaze, enough to unravel everything if someone opened the wrong door. Enough to remind them both that in this church, the music wasn't the only thing holy people were listening to. And when the organist finally stood, gathering his sheet music slowly, he met the director's eyes with a look that said everything else could wait. For now, the music was theirs. The club owner slammed the dressing room door before the first heel hit the floor. Said he was tired of the lateness, tired of the excuses, tired of the attitude. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. His voice was calm and low, the kind that came right before real consequences. The Queen didn't flinch, didn't apologize, just reached into the duffel bag, pulled out a tube of foundation, and started blending. He wasn't going to explain again that his day job ran late, that his shift had been extended, that he hadn't eaten since lunch, that the gig economy didn't give a fuck about drag. The other queens fell quiet for a second. Then one of them said it, just loud enough. He only still here 'cause that man keeps paying his tab. The Queen paused. She didn't know what she was talking about. Not really. But she wasn't wrong either. He finished his face, popped in his earrings, adjusted the tuck. Didn't say a word, but the truth was sitting in the back of his throat. That man was the reason he was still here. Not because of money, but because after every show, no matter how late, he was always parked out front. Always waited, but never came inside. They weren't together. That's what he always told himself. It was just a rhythm, a pattern, something soft that didn't ask for labels. He liked it that way. He didn't want to be kept, didn't want to owe anyone anything. But he did like knowing that someone still showed up for him, even if they never talked about what it was. That night, the show hit harder than usual. He moved like he had something to prove. The room ate it up. Laughter, tips, two numbers back to back. The club owner said nothing, just nodded once. That was enough. Later, the dressing room emptied out slow. Wigs off, cleavage wiped, heels traded for slides. He sat in the corner, legs stretched, lashes still on. He liked this part the most, not the spotlight, not the stage, the after, when everything was quiet and the makeup cracked a little. Out front, the car was already parked, engine on. He didn't rush, just walked out the back, hoodie over his wig cap, bag slung low. When he opened the door, the man looked at him and smiled, same as always. They didn't talk about the future. But when he looked out the window and saw the club lights fading in the rear view, he felt calm in a way the day job never gave him. He wasn't trying to be saved, just seen. And some nights that was enough. Two men meet at a skate night, just trying to break the silence between them. What starts off casual shifts under slow songs and soft touches. By the end of the night, something real begins to form between them. The rink was full, families, teens, couples moving in circles under the glow. The DJ played old school jams, that kind of groove that makes bodies remember how to move together. They skated side by side at first, steady, silent. The shorter one led with control, the other clumsy but determined, catching on to rhythm the way he always did. Late, but right on time. When the song slowed down, lights dimmed, he reached out his hand. The other linked his hand with the other. They circled the rink again, slower now, hands clasped, fingertips sweating. Every brush of contact said something neither had words for. At the far corner near the rail, he tripped, catching himself against the other's chest. Their bodies pressed close, laughter somewhere between relief and something else. The music changed, turning to a track made for closeness. He slid his hands around the other's waist, guiding him backwards, slow skating chest to chest. The light strobed pink over brown skin, highlighting smiles that looked too easy, too familiar. People skated around them, laughter and motion everywhere. But inside their small circle of rhythm, it felt private. Their world became heat, skin, and the scrape of skates over wood. He leaned in close enough that his lips brushed his neck, close enough to taste the salt on his skin. It wasn't about skating anymore. The lights brightened as the song ended. They coasted to the edge, hands still holding. He let go first, pretending to fix a strap on his skates, smiling like it didn't matter. The other just watched him, chest still rising hard from the lap around the rink. My neighbor's brother was in a wheelchair and in my bed. Two black men, one hallway. A kiss that changed everything. He was just the neighbor's brother, visiting for a while, rolling through the building like he owned the place. The first time I stopped to help with his groceries, he looked at me like he didn't need it, but didn't mind the company. After that, the way we moved around each other felt different. Like we both knew this was becoming more than just polite. He wasn't supposed to feel like that. Not the way he looked at me when I said good morning. Not the way his laugh stuck with me after the elevator doors closed. And definitely not the way my chest felt tight whenever I heard the wheels of his chair rolling down the hall. At first it was ordinary. He angled toward the kitchen like he lived there. Chair steady against the counter while he stirred and joked about my weak-ass seasoning. Or how he'd block the hallway on purpose, parking in the middle just to make me squeeze by. When our arms touched, I tried not to react, but it was like something electric passed between us. I started looking for reasons to linger. He never moved fast, but he moved like he was sheer, and I liked that more than I wanted to admit. One night, we ended up outside in front of the building together. It was late and quiet outside. He talked about wanting to move out, get his own place. No roommates, no couch crashing, no hand-me-down schedules. I nodded like I understood, but I was just trying to memorize the way his voice sounded when he wasn't performing for anyone. The kiss wasn't rushed. His hand gripped the armrest as he leaned up. My palm slid to the back of his neck, fingers curling, steadying him. His mouth was warm. My knee pressed against the wheel of his chair as he pulled me closer. None of it felt awkward. It felt like something we'd both been trying not to say. But secrets don't stay secrets in a building like ours. His brother saw us. Maybe it was the way my door stayed open too long, or how we laughed too loud on the steps. Either way, the next morning, the neighbor's eyes cut sharper. His "what's up" came colder. And I knew right then what happened between us wasn't just ours anymore. Because the neighbor's brother wasn't supposed to feel like this. And now, the whole building was about to find out. The lawyer who fell for his client. Desire, danger, and secrets in the courtroom. The first rule of law was don't get personal. But that rule broke the moment he sat across from him in the holding room. Wrists cuffed, county blues hanging loose, posture too calm for a man accused of murder. He didn't look scared. He looked curious, like he already knew he'd get under someone's skin. The attorney told himself it was just the case. Just late nights, just pressure, just responsibility. But every meeting ran long. Every call drifted past midnight. Every glance across the table asked a question neither of them would say out loud. And the lawyers started giving him space to answer. Rooms without cameras, hallways nobody used, doors that locked behind them too easily. He knew how to pull strings, how to get signatures without questions. Case strategy, he told the admin. Client prep. But the folders never stayed closed for long. The first time, nothing was said. Just a kiss in a storage room where the lights didn't hum and the walls didn't echo. It wasn't soft. It wasn't rough. It was calculated, like the client had been waiting to see how far the lawyer would let him go. After that, they made a habit of silence, hands brushing over desk edges, lips hovering near phone receivers, breathing hard between file cabinets and locked doors. The lawyer always led them to the room, but the client always took the lead once they were inside. He told himself it was control, that he was managing risk, but he liked the way the client moved in those private spaces, confident, deliberate, dominant. He liked the way pressure built before either of them touched anything. He liked folding fast, then pretending nothing happened when the door opened again. But files don't lie. The evidence didn't disappear just because he was sleeping with his client. Timelines broke down. Witnesses contradicted each other. The pieces didn't fit unless he allowed for the possibility that the man he was defending was actually guilty. Still, he kept sneaking around with him in back rooms, kept his calendar clear, kept saying yes in ways he couldn't admit outside those walls. because the truth wasn't just about the case anymore. It was about the way his knees went weak when the client whispered, "Trust me," into his ear. It was about the way shame and hunger had started to blur into one. The verdict hadn't been read yet, but the lawyer already knew he'd been compromised. And when the client whispered, "Trust me," one last time, he didn't know if it was a promise or a warning. Thank you for listening to Stories Between Us Anthology. You can find every episode on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Rate the show and leave a comment. It helps more people find us.